So I wanted to take a minute to talk about this quarter tonal method that I've been using recently. Um, I just kind of want to briefly go over it and some of the different ways that I've used it in my writing and some of the different kind of rules and tendencies that I've noticed and the way that this method functions. Um, so at its root, really, it is just the reduction of a dissonance. It is taking a concept from linear harmony, specifically from the blues, and deciding, okay, if there's a linear harmony, if that is true, if there is a linear harmony, which obviously there is, then how can we explain the existence of quarter tones in blues music? For example, the neutral third in a dominant chord, a dominant one, right? Well, I think that my answer has become because if you play the E flat or the E natural in a C dominant 7 chord, they both have a function, a sharp 9 and a major 3. The semitone relationship, when they both function within the chord, merits a lot of openness of anything in between those two. Same thing between the 9 and the sharp 9, right? Or the major 7 and the 1, or the sharp 4 and the 5, the 13 and the flat 7, right? So all of these are semitone dissonances within the structure of the chord. And so let's listen to this first example where I take you through the actual dissonance, the B to the C in a major 7 chord, and I progressively fill it out. This is fully stacked tertian, and this is a more open voicing. So the first thing I need to address is that these are not supposed to sound the same, right? These are totally different. They do not function to our ears the exact same way. But on paper, functionally, they have the same tendency, maybe would be the right word, right? It does feel different. It's a different color, but the same analytical function. This and this analytically are the same chord, right? It is a C and a B, and this is a C, and then the B that's just raised a little to meet in between the two. So the further we voice this out, the better it sounds, obviously, because here what we are hearing is the relationship from this note to that note. So we get that rub. But when we hear it in this context, we're hearing a lot of intervals at once. One here, one here, one here, one here. We're hearing a lot of different intervals. So our ears are more comfortable with it. So pretty cool, right? So this is a chord progression where I've taken any of these semitones, these B's and these C's, and reduced them here into this quarter tone. So it doesn't feel like it makes that much of a difference. But to me, this slight color change is very, very interesting. All right, so modulation. Because the quarter tones are kind of, sort of acting in a way like the sum of their parts, the sum of the two dissonances, then what that would mean is that the implication of certain chords and dissonances can obviously be used then to modulate. So this would be a C to an A flat to a D flat. This is a very normal change. You know, Neo-Riemannian theory, the triadic transformations. But this is going to be a quarter tone deviation, implying that this is kind of in between an A flat and a G, and this is kind of in between an E flat and an E. So what is functionally happening here is we're looking at an A flat chord in first inversion, which has an implied major 7 and implied flat 13. So because of that dominancy, then it can tonicize D flat as the 5, right? So let's listen. And then at the very, very end, I just give you the standard clusters that this could be implying. Awesome. So because of this, any of the dissonance in any chordal structure, as long as it is justifiable analytically, can totally function, right? So here with the super Lydian concept, we've stacked in fifths and fifths and fifths. We've gone all the way up to C sharp in a C chord. Well, maybe I want to imply those dissonances between the major 7 and the 1, the sharp 11 and the 5, and the sharp 15 and the 9, right? So what I'll do is I will actually imply those dissonances by sharpening it again. And so now we've gone up in this chain of fifths that when we get to where the dissonances arrive within the chordal structures, I've reduced them by bringing up those pitches by a quarter step or quarter tone. Right? So here, here, and here. So let's listen to these 3 chords. This being the super Lydian, and this being my version, my linear substitution method of a similar sound. For me, this is brighter. This is a brighter chord. It does what I want Lydian to do, right? I want it to brighten up the sound. So here's the original. Here's mine. I personally prefer it. So this 1 quarter tone idea is what we just talked about, right? It implies the interval of a flat 2. So what happens if you have 2? Well, if you have 2 quarter tones that are different, then you have a couple different possible options. Any deviation, alteration, I'd say, to the notes into the post or into the 24 tone kind of world. What we're doing is we're altering those notes, right? We're pushing them in a certain direction, or if we are doing quarter tone flats, we're pulling them down in a certain direction. Well, you can do 2 things. You can pull again to remove quarter tones, or you can push again to remove quarter tones. And so it has a very, very close relationship to actually both of these chords. It's only a quarter tone off. So 1 chord can function either way, as this or as this. And this would be the pulled, obviously. It is no more this chord than it is this chord, right? You can also think of this as, which is what we talked about earlier. All right, this one is another example where we have 2 different qualities. Right here we have major and a suspension. Here we have major and minor. So pretty interesting because the same chord then works in 2 different tonal areas. All right, when we have 3 quarter tones, what you're doing is you're implying a triadic structure, a 3-note chord that can work on its own. So we'll see that here where we have this very beefy A9 G quarter sharp, chord, giving us this very dominant sound. Well, we can treat this as an A9 chord or as a G quarter sharp chord because we have A, C sharp, B, there's our A9, and then we have F quarter, G quarter, D quarter, which is pretty much a G7 chord, right? In its 3rd inversion. So with that knowledge, then we can use it to modulate into 2 completely different key centers with the same chord. This is resolving to a D, working off the A7, and this is resolving to a C quarter sharp, working off the G quarter sharp 7. So with the same dominant structure, we resolved 1 to a D chord and 1 to a C quarter sharp chord. Pretty cool, right? So this is an example chord progression that I've kind of put together, just kind of throwing all the tricks out there. I have 1 chord within this phrase that has no quarter tones and 1 that has 4 unique quarter tones. So this is mixing. This whole method is meant to mix standard, traditional, functional, triadic system with quarter tone deviations and implication of dissonances, right? So let's listen. Really nice. So one quick thing I want to say, the reason that I'm not existing within this 24 tone equal temperament world is because we're losing triadic, we're not losing, we're adding triadic qualities. With 24 tone equal temperament, we have many different types of triads beyond major, minor, augmented, diminished, suspended, yada yada yada. This is just the list that is altering the 3rd, not the 5th. So potentially this would be doubled and then doubled again because you can alter both, one or the other. So these are just alterations of the 3rd. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different triadic qualities. For me, that it's difficult because this chord feels like it has a lot more dissonance than this chord. And when I say dissonance, I don't mean happy or sad. I mean dissonance that is wanting to move somewhere. We're not accustomed to hearing this. And for me, it feels fairly leading. It feels fairly dominant in a weird way. And my reasoning would be, well, why is that? If I'm analyzing this with my method, I'm looking at an F sharp, major 7, with a sharp 11 of the C, and a flat 9 of the G. So maybe this is implying a super Lydian triad with the sharp 11 and the sharp 15, or maybe this is a flat 5 structure. It just, for me, this is something that must belong in context in a way that this chord doesn't. It doesn't feel, for me, like it feels dominant in a way. But if we listen to this major chord here, just this chord, it doesn't have any sort of tendency. Neither does a minor triad. neither one of these feel any sort of dominant tendency at all. But I would say, well, this feels as if it does, or at least has a 7, an extension. They just feel significantly more complex. And for my analysis that I do and my writing that I do, I would be more inclined to think of this as a major 7, right? An F major 9 between the E and the F, a C. It feels to me like it could better function in that sense than as just a standalone triadic quality for me personally. And what that does is it makes composition a little bit easier. You don't need to necessarily think about redefining what is diatonic, what is chromatic, how many tones are there now that I'm dealing with, and still be in 12-tone equal temperament mode and implement quarter tonality and different colors into your writing, right? For me, that's really the biggest takeaway of this method. I don't want to reinvent the tonal structure that we will most likely always have, and I want to work within these functional idioms of 12-tone harmonies, but I want to take these rubs of the quarter tone side of things that, to me, I'm thinking of the blues, right, and the neutral third, and this idea of the linear harmony must imply that there's a flexibility, right? The semitone dissonance gives us this kind of flexibility to be a little on or a little off, or it kind of functions like this or it kind of functions like this, right? So that's just my theory that I've been working on recently that I've been using in my writing. I'll make sure to get some examples uploaded and things like that, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Obviously, of course, send anything in the comments if you have any questions.